All right, everybody, away we go. Welcome to today's call. It is Friday, June 8th of 2018. I'm in Boston, so it looks a little funky when we broadcast live, or you hear a little echo in the background, a little tight room here today in the Bean with all the brick and the brownstone. So I'm excited, as always, to do these calls every Friday because in the mastermind, we bubble up a lot of themes that merit that we go a little bit deeper when it comes to the sales training call. And this week I've opened up my mind map so that I have it here. We've really been delving into scripts and making sure that you stay on track, because what we've been doing at the mastermind level for the businesses in general is trying to make sure that we pay close attention to checklisting everything so that we don't try to run this business and in this case sell on muscle. It's just a big mistake. So it's easy also to lose your way in doing that properly when you are sort of rambling on and getting into a conversation and you forget the outcome that you're after, which is to create a prospect. And I keep saying that each week on the sales training call because it's not about getting the appointment. It's about getting the prospect who might be ready for an appointment or who might be ready to be willing and able to engage in a long-term real estate relationship with you that will lead to an appointment, subsequently a client status and a sale. So you have to understand that whole process to get it right from the beginning, because too many of you coming out of the box so hot, hoping for that appointment, you're trying to really be in the scraping of cream business, and that can leave you dejected because there is a lot of rejection. In the digital age, everybody's hiding behind some piece of technology to vet you. So it's really tough work. And so the role of the prospector, the person picking up the phone, is really something we need to deal with every week here. However, having said that, on yesterday's campfire, I went back and reiterated that although there might be a script and a formula for getting somebody to engage you in a phone call and in a presentation, there's still this buoy that you can hang on to of information. And that buoy has really got more to do with your core content, or that thing that you hang yourself on, that you're really surviving in and around. And I think that becomes very, very important for you to remember that our core content is the 7-point strategic plan for sellers and the 6-point strategic plan for buyers. So last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, when we were coaching in this venue, Chad, who's on Rossetti's Realty team with Gail, I asked him to go out there and just have these real estate conversations, but with the intent to prospect, to create an exchange of information whereby you have contact information and you can follow up. But there's this movement before, like I want to envision Chad sitting there and he's delivering this information to somebody. It's just information, okay? It is not anything more than that. What he has to do is then begin to add insight, okay, or insight. I don't know why I pronounced it that way, but he has to add insight to that conversation. And that's really where somebody begins to engage you as a professional, and they're willing to exchange that information with you. And I think that becomes important. So what I'd like to do today is not lecture. I like to go out there, and I know Tanyelle and Gail can too. Some of the real diligent people are in here early and often, and I know it's a slow roll on a Friday and the weather's starting to get nice. So I'm looking for participation here early and often from the group, okay? So let's open this up, make sure my mic's working okay. We good? 2 ways? Tanyelle?
Yeah.
All right, good. Awesome. All right, so Tanyelle, why don't we kick it off with you? Okay. What I'd like to do with you is just say, let's go back to what we were talking about yesterday. There was some good stuff happening there. And I just want to make sure that we broach those subjects of what Meredith was doing yesterday. Let's bring that back up because I thought that was a good piece of content to really roll with. Okay. So if you don't mind, will you bring that back up? And after we just give everybody context so anybody listening in knows what's happening, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Okay. So, Meredith, like I said, has just, been working her expires in her geographical farm area and has just been a boss with taking control of reaching out to sellers. And so she had went through the expired listing course with one of them, didn't have the ability to get phone number, so she knocked on the door on the 5th week, and the seller invited her in, was very seemed leery at first, but warmed up to her, allowed her to tour the whole home.
Yeah.
And after the tour was pretty much, asking Meredith, hey, what do you think this could sell for? Where do you think the price point is at? Because now we've got a construction loan that's getting ready to take effect because we're building a custom home elsewhere. So it looks like they're a little bit more motivated. So Meredith's response was, let me call, let me check some numbers. I'll get back with you. And then she came out and called me.
Okay.
So the question yesterday was, okay, kind of how do we one, keep this prospect warm, and where do we go from here with, how to steer them so that we have a chance at getting the listing at a reasonable, value.
Right. Okay, good. And so let's go back and tell me what you learned from the discussion yesterday and what you and Meredith talked about subsequently after the campfire yesterday.
So both of us really took away two things from our discussion yesterday, which was to focus on the sold, and to allow this, and the second was to allow the seller, their process. Mm-hmm. Because, we know where the value is. This is what we do all day long, but we have to be respectful of their ability to go through the process and to come to the same understanding, we are on their time frame.
Right. Right. Okay. Our time frame and their level of understanding. Right. So I think a lot of us.
Right.
What's interesting too, I see this with top producers often, and Paul Cantu expressed it the other day. Lee Stillwell has expressed it on a regular basis. Is that we get to this point where, when we start to know something well, and this you would be in this situation too, because what's happened to you is you've begun to really know the 7-point strategic plan. You've taught it to some of your agents, and it's worked. It's been effective where people said, wow, that's a professional approach. I like it. The challenge is sometimes we can get so caught up in, wow, this is working. Wow, everybody needs this, that we get so exuberant that it's almost like we're overselling our strategy. We're overselling ourselves. And so we come full bore in it. We got to tell them this. And it's nothing more than bubbling enthusiasm that we have for our process and what we do. But what I would say is that I think it's really critical to gear that down and start with listening. And, everybody laughs when I say, well, you probably don't believe what a good listener I am because you always all see me in the context of coach and teacher, where it's important to throw a lot out there to agitate thought. But when I shift into the technical mode of being the salesperson, the reason I love this business is why I listen. I'm very interested in the human endeavor. What is the struggle of the person that I'm trying to solve? Now, I know, Tanyel, walking into that situation, I have a very clear strategic approach. Whether it be to negotiating, whether it be to helping somebody's own mindset come down. I know I have that bag of tools with me. So imagine me, the ultimate plumber, showing up with 2 bags of tools ready to go. But instead of walking into the house, sitting down and saying, where do you see this new tool I have? And it's going to do this and it's going to do that. I say, okay, thanks for calling me. But before I get started and really going at this, let me just reiterate to you what it is. The challenge here is that you now want to build a new house. I presume that's for downsizing and upsizing, which is it? Oh yeah, downsizing? Okay, great. And so where are you at in that process? You're really beginning to lean in, Tanyel, on what matters to them, which is their life. And that now they have this massive financial transaction that they have to be involved in all at once. And I think we overlook that. Think about it. If somebody hits a home run and they sell a company and they walk away, let's call it a small business, and they get in their hands $750,000, okay? That's a lot of money all at once to sell a company. But yet in our business, every day, people are involved in transactions from the low end of 200 and say, well, I know it's not low end for some places, but 250,000 up to 5, 10 million. That's a lot of money to deal with at once, whether there's a mortgage or cash, it doesn't matter. So we have to take that context that we are involved in a massive financial situation. You with me so far? Tracking me here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think what becomes important is that in recognizing that, we want to make sure that we listen. So the next thing that she should do, and again, Meredith, was total kudos to her because she just went in and door knocked. It's interesting. I think Voltaire just jumped online here today. We were just talking about this. So Voltaire, we're talking about a rookie who's, in Colorado, walks up to a door knocks it, and gets into a real substantial conversation. But now, the minute she leaves, Tanyel, as I was saying to Voltaire as well the other day, the relationship begins to atrophy, right? They forget who you are. And the only reason they let her in to begin with is because she forced herself upon their doorstep. However, given that inch, we don't want to let that inch close up naturally by itself. We want to keep pushing in there with this gentle probing of insight. So now you said, I asked for you to really give them some insight about what sold. Now I did say, don't call back. Don't call back. I said, go get the information. And now Tanyelle and Meredith go back and door knock the information. Why? You don't have relationship like you would have if you had garnered a lead and been following up with it for quite some time. You just don't have that relationship. So you need to be realistic in that moment that it's almost going to take this second delivery to really wow them. Maybe they're impressed that you showed up in the beginning, but they'll really be wowed if you show up with the subsequent information and now you, the owner of the company. You tracking that?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So now I think that's really where we start. What's next? Now you tell me, if you show up at that door, what are you going to show up with this time?
So we spent last night working on my CME, which I think you posted a picture of, and just really going into just digging deep into the sold, during the time period that property had listed. So we have a clear understanding of what competition they were facing when they had the property on the market. And then, where is the market currently? What's currently for sale? And just really dissecting these properties so that we are clear on what we believe, the problem is, but so that we can put the information in front of the seller so they can draw the same conclusion, hopefully, that we've come to.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, why do you want to come to a conclusion? Let me challenge that concept.
Well, one of the things that we noted about the previous listing was that, Danny, the previous broker did not market that property. Pictures are horrible. I mean, when you talk about, the line in the listing about, their digital footprint, that footprint is horrible.
Yeah.
Dark pictures, person looks like they took it with their own phone. So, the line about yesterday that you brought up about, hey, what was on the market, when you had your property on the market, and what was causing, buyers to choose other properties over yours. Clearly, to me, part of it was the marketing, because it was horrible in comparison to the other properties. So trying to bring that out in a way that's tactful and at the same time, that's what I mean by conclusion is, there were some things that weren't done right by that broker, but I don't want to call the other broker out. I don't want to be negative.
Yeah. Well, again, you can do it without being negative, because the minute you personally
done right by that broker, but I don't want to call the other broker out. I don't want to.
Hang on. So I think the key here, Tanyelle, is that you don't need to think in such absolute terms. So the reason I asked you, why do you have to come to a conclusion? A conclusion is a very clear thing in my mind's eye. What it really is a very specific point. And this is a process. And as we arrive at the beginning of that process, I don't necessarily think that we should be so hyper-focused on a specific point, because that would require you and I to be just extraordinarily good at this, where we're going in there. And I think this is what I'm trying to change here, is that I think too many agents are going in, instead of as market makers, they're going in as people who feel this burden that they're supposed to come up with exact asking prices and exact sale prices, and that's just unreasonable. I'll say it 1,000 times over. It's unreasonable. It is not the way in reality any of this works, unless you are in some really super hyper-focused, subdivision where every model was exactly the same and everybody was lining up to buy them, and you could be that exacting on your price. We just don't have that luxury in this business, and it's not the right thing to do. In fact, I think it is the bottom line of why so many problems are created for agents. All this idea that we have to be so perfectly right. It's rooted in our own insecurity to go in there and whatever it is, dominate the situation, not be wrong is probably the bigger thing. We're always worried about being embarrassed and being wrong. So like you could even hear it in your language. I'm hoping that they'll agree with my conclusion. See, I never go in like that. What I go in is with evidence. So what I was suggesting yesterday is, look, that you and Meredith go look at the evidence, yes, of the listing itself. You know, there are some obvious points to start with. Going into MLS, printing it out, and looking at the horrendous pictures for a property that was listed at what, 900,000? Is that right?
Yep.
So that's terrible, you know, incompetence that we've just gotten lazy. I mean, again, if the agent were in front of me, I wouldn't hurt that person. I'd coach them and say, come on, look, somebody just trusted you with a $900,000 listing. The best you can do is take pictures on your phone. That's not acceptable. You need to sit with your broker if you don't have the upfront money. You need to get professional photography, floor plans. You need to put together videos. We live in the digital age. That's just, it's not right. I'm not going to call it incompetence because that person might not know. But that is your opportunity to identify that in the context of what I said earlier in the call, your core content. If you have a 7-step process and all leading up to marketing is conditioning and staging, and then that digital footprint captures the best moments in time, do you see how easy it is instead of hurting somebody by saying, well, they didn't do this and they didn't do that? John Salkowski and I were having that conversation the other day where I just don't feel the need to hurt the other person, but say, what I will do differently here is this. You see, your property is conditioned well, but I would have come in and said, look, let's go back outside for a second. There's a couple of spots where trees need to be pruned. Black mulch needs to be laid down to get the sharpness. You could paint a little bit of the trim, of course, if you're willing to do some of those things. When we get inside, what I would say is before you list again, have a professional cleaning team come in because they'll clean things that you don't even know need to be cleaned. It's more about creating the sensation of clean rather than actually saying, oh, there's dirt in the corner. Then and only then can we really take a look at your furniture and move it around, and if need be, get a professional stager in here to move the property around, because that's the moment I have to build towards. I have to look at the pricing it right. I have to help you recondition and then stage on top of the reconditioned property so that we can get our professional photography and footprint done that one moment in time. And we have only that one moment in time before we then able to go put it out online. See, you hear that narrative, Tanyelle? It's just a professional narrative that has no need to talk about anybody else that was horrendous. Yes, our emotional reactions. Oh my gosh, can you believe there's people out there getting $900,000 listings and they're barely fogging the mirror? Yes, I can. And I'm with you. And I feel that emotional way too. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go.
So I was going to say, so how do we answer the question that she posed, you know, when Meredith and I were talking later, Meredith brought out that she wanted to know, you know, what was wrong? Why didn't there sell, and wanted us to come up, you know, with the solution.
Tanya, whatever just happened, your phone line just blew up. All right, anybody want to weigh in on that as they were listening to that? Voltaire, if you want to weigh in here today, I'm assuming that's you personally on the line there and not, you know, the group. So feel free to weigh in there. We'll find out what just happened to Tanyelle there. But anybody else want to weigh in on that? Cantu group, Voltaire, Grant, you just came in a little late. Richie Madden's team, any of my mastermind members that are listening in here want to weigh in on this?
Hey, Danny.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm here.
Can you hear me, Danny?
Yep, I can, Paul. Your mic is a little noisy too, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in the grocery store picking up breakfast. I just wanted to say, I can, in retrospect, I've had a really rough patchy last 9 months, and I can honestly attribute it to 2 things. One is I was giving them the price that I thought, kind of shoving it down their throats, and I know I lost a lot of listings because of it, as opposed to using the seller questionnaire and then trying to, come up with, and if the comps don't support what they want, that's fine, but at least you can get it out of them most times what they want, and then have a real frank conversation with them as to what the comps are. I think that was one thing, and I think also in our hot market with, like almost zero inventory, when you have so much competition in going up against other listing agents, and it's kind of a race to the bottom. It's like we got Redfin signs all over the place, not signs, billboards, list for 1%, which is obviously not true. That's just the selling. That's just a listing ops commission. They still got to pay the other, 2.5%, 3%, usually 3% for the selling office. But it's misleading enough to garner attention. And I was looking at it that on a $500,000 listing, which was 2-3 years ago, at 3% it was $15K, which is a ton of money.
Right.
At 800,000 at 5%, you split the difference 2.5%. You're still getting $20,000. It's $5,000 more than you were used to getting. So why be greedy and ask for the full 6 and get 24? I mean, it kind of becomes absurd. And none of these like light bulbs went off in my head really until like the last month after multiple conversations with you. And so, I did get this last one that went on the market yesterday at $1,135,000. I did get that at 3%.
Yeah.
But the selling office commission was a flat 30K, which is still a ridiculous amount of money, right?
Yeah.
So that's my insights. I think that you're totally right about, bringing comps, but not necessarily drawing the conclusion for them, kind of helping them to find it on their own by just virtue of all your good information that you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, well, that's right. And look, I think you bring up some interesting things about marketplaces and the challenges in making a market, right? I think that, and again, I always have to give that caveat because this is a public forum and it's just the right thing to do by law anyway for antitrust. Commissions are always negotiable, as we know. And I think sometimes we forget that ourselves because we have a business model or we're in a marketplace that delivers a certain percentage rate as an offering, whatever it might be. It's the law of corroboration, Paul, right? We only see and hear the things that corroborate the way we're currently thinking. My job is to disturb the peace and challenge that thinking so that you see different perspectives, right? And it's hard to do for myself. I have to read books and challenge it all the time. But I think, that really, hang on. Yeah, that really in line, what happens, Paul, is as a market maker, that also has to do with your choice. If you're losing people because you're going in, it'll be interesting today because somebody's trying to negotiate a commission with me right now, and I have a formula, and I, in this case, am pushing back. And the reason I'm comfortable pushing back, we are 2-3 years into the relationship. I am certain that I don't have any competition, Paul, for this listing. I'm certain we're that far down. So I'm leaning back and saying, look, on 375, you're sitting here asking me for 5 apples versus 6. You're going to take away my ability to offer a better, co-broke fee, which is part of my marketing to agents to have you stand out. And if you're really thinking that I'm not good enough to get another point, raise the price. The asking price from $375 to $379.9. Just do it because I'm trying to pattern interrupt somebody that I have a relationship with. However, if I'm subsequently sitting in a house and I'm a business person sitting there saying, I always need more and good inventory. I always need more and good reasonable people. Paul, I think one of the things that we don't mention enough in the sales training call is the North Star. Okay, I just did a quick Instagram about the North Star. We lose our clarity for the moment, meaning what? If I have a business model that I'm trying to reach by the end of the 12 months, I have a sales goal. This is for all of you. I have a very particular sales goal. I have a very particular number of GCI that will get me there. I understand what rate at what average price will get me there. So the minute that I see 375 at 2.5%, the warning lights go off in my head. That is off or below where you're going to need to be to hit your goal on a per deal basis. So it becomes important. Now, if I were sitting in the house and it was a cattle call and I'd gone in and I'd given my presentation, and Tanya, I'll come back to you. Your phone just went wild, so I muted it when you came back in, but I'm going to pick up with you. Paul carried this a little bit while that blew up. But they go dovetail together. If I'm sitting there, Paul, on the phone or in the house and talking to Voltaire the other day, door knocking, and somebody's saying, what's your commission? That's just their knee-jerk reaction and their understanding of our business. That's just what it is. Now, unless you're Richie Madden, who owns a flat fee thing, he begs them silently, I hope, to ask that question because he says you get full service for flat fee. So unless that's your gig, then you're sitting there waiting for this to come. And when it comes, say, yeah, no problem. I'm happy to discuss fee as part of what I do because that's actually part and parcel with pricing and marketing. So I'd be happy to talk about that because the answer is it's flexible depending on where we want to start the price, what we want to offer the co-brokes. So when can I sit down and show you how we choose that together, you and I, based on the entire formula. Now, that might sound to some like double talk, but it's not. So it's just really in the beginning, they want a discount because they're worried about being taken advantage by somebody. So their first thing is that, because that's all they know. That's how, this is going to sound harsh when I say it, but I'm going to do it to illustrate a point. That's how dumb they are about what the process really entails, right? And I say dumb because that's an opportunity for us to go, okay, here's this little kindergarten understanding of the real estate agency business and how we go out and make a market for property with our 7 steps. Fabulous. What a fabulous opportunity for me to lean in and begin to educate them and be a little bit more detached from the outcome. So that's where, Tanyelle, I'm going to open up your mic again. Hopefully it's a little bit better this time. Tanyelle, that's where I'm starting to lean in with you and say, all right, do you see how it's so much more important to see, is it going to be commission? Is it going to be price? Is it going to be timing? What is that thing that's important to them? Because once I know that, it's very clearly going to be able to easily represent that part of the discussion in the 7 points. If you say commission, you heard what I just said. If you say pricing, I lean in on my pricing it right formula that's market making. I get an opportunity to discuss that, but I get an opportunity to also grab the bull by the horns around process and not have them drag me into one lane. Because if they drag me into one lane, that's a dangerous place for you and I. If it's all about commission, if it's all about the price, and we don't show them the rest of the story, we have a problem because now they just don't like what we say in that lane. Whereas if we're more insightful, if we expand their knowledge, and again, the word dumb was meaning zero education about this. It wasn't derogatory. It's just a vacuum of an opportunity. You follow that, Tanyelle?
Yeah, so Danny, then with you saying that, because I'm looking at, our appointment this evening, and 2 things. When we immediately, as you say, cheat to, thinking that commission is the issue without first trying to communicate value in the 7-point strategic, plan that we have, do you feel that speaks to these brokers who take shortcuts then on assisting with conditioning and marketing, because now they've taken a cut on commission and they feel that they don't have either the motivation or the impetus to invest heavily on this listing because they're getting less than what they perceive they should be getting?
Well, it could be 2 things. It could be that they're intentionally not doing as much because they're discount. I mean, if somebody's really intelligently chosen discount listings, like Paul was referencing Redfin, and they're intentional about that and say, we don't do this or this or this, well, then I could embrace that. I would say, okay, yeah, great. They don't take professional pictures. They don't take measurements. They don't do push marketing. They don't do open houses. They just really are just a flat fee company to list it in MLS, whatever they are. If they own that lane, Tanyelle, wonderful. It's intentional. But I don't think that's the case most of the time. I think in Seth Godin's book called Linchpin, he's talking about becoming indispensable. See, there's a race to the bottom, Tanyelle, in most businesses in the digital age. There's just a race to the bottom based on price because the agent is not getting educated. They're not becoming strategic. They're not taking a deeper understanding of the process. It's just a massive problem in our industry, and it always has been. It's why I'm in the coaching end of it, to share what I know about process and strategy to make you all indispensable. See, that education is indispensable. And somebody who's logical and intellectual and professional, as we talk about avatar, those are all descriptions of somebody I want to do business with. They're intelligent. They appreciate a professional approach. They know that I'm not grinding them. They understand the value when I'm expressing, and we don't always agree. It's a healthy relationship. So that makes me more indispensable versus the rest of the crowd. So I would just say that, I learned from my mentor that, hey, there's a positioning in the presentation that says most agents do it this way. I do it that way. I thought it was too confrontational the way it was taught. I don't think you need confrontation. I think what you need to say is, look, I hear you. You want to talk about commission, and I don't want you to think I'm ducking it, but I arrive at that conversation a little bit differently. I want you to show you what you don't know about my business. My business. I have 7 points that leads me to make the best possible market for your individual listing. And I want you to hear that so you see the difference. So at least side by side, the guy or gal that offered you some discounted commission, if they're doing everything that I'm doing for that discount, you should hire them. You see that strength in that positioning? We become so confident that they're not, and that they could never understand that. They could never explain it that way, right? If they've mastered the understanding, then that's different. But it's just not the case. I think you, like most of us, tend to focus too much on what's wrong with them, and our tendency is to go in and hammer that other person. People do not like that. We call it in this modern context bullying. And not that we're consciously doing it, but we are. We're going in and we're bullying that person's pictures. We're bullying that person's strategy. And we don't need to do that, because that's also subsequently a race to the bottom competitively. See, we can race to the bottom with fee, or we can race to the bottom in a competitive way like that. Whereas I'm saying become indispensable by being the only one who's discussing this. You can actually, ironically, be in a completely different business from everybody else in any business. You can create this whole other lane that just doesn't exist. It's this professional approach with a stepped strategy to make a market for these properties. And subsequently, that education around listings gives you the intelligence to do the same for buyers, which I'm using right now in 2 of my situations where I'm negotiating. I'm using the same technique with all my analysis, my positioning, what's there. And yet last night I heard this is firm and fair. Guess what it wasn't? It wasn't firm and fair. It was a continuation of the discussion. Because if we start saying that to each other, then we're all locking horns and we just don't let the market finally find its place there. Does that make sense, Tanya?
Yep.
Okay.
It does.
Yeah, because nobody wants to be taken advantage of. So the market maker is the person who physically stands in the middle. It's an ancient thing. The middle person goes way back to the days of bartering food, for supplies. I mean, there's always been this concept of somebody who comes in and mitigates and sits in the middle of 2 parties and keeps everybody calm and keeps the intelligence and insight flowing, so that people, the best guides, are almost transparent towards the end of the deal. They've almost quietly withdrawn from the whole thing, and the deal has found itself coming together. That's a very difficult thing to emotionally accept, but it's true. Why? We all want to be proud of ourselves. We want that proverbial pat on the back that said, I did this. I sold that property. I brought that together, right? But if you really can detach from your own emotion, you'll tend to cheat more towards your insightful commentary about your very informational stepped strategy. Much more powerful, Tanya. Much more. And Paul was saying that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Paul was saying that. Yeah, that's a good anecdote. Anybody want to weigh in?
Danny?
Yeah, go ahead. Come on. I was waiting for somebody. Go ahead.
I actually have a question.
Sure. Who's this? Who's this, by the way?
This is Laura.
Hey, Laura. Oh, Laura. I didn't even recognize your voice. It's different.
So, well, I'm knee deep in a negotiation, as you know, and
Yep.
so I just got word that Tyrian's offer now they're getting another one in.
Yep.
And we're putting in a full price. We were going to make it good until 8 this evening, but the agent just called and said that they're getting another offer, and that the sellers have 2 more showings tomorrow and won't be accepting an offer until Sunday.
Okay.
So obviously we want to get him this house. Is there a way to, make the seller accept an offer sooner than Sunday? I just feel like
Laura, the only way we'll know that is by picking up the phone and calling the agent and saying that explicitly. Say, look, these people really don't want to end up in a bidding war. Is there something that they could offer to the sellers that would end it? Is there something really important that they would say yes to right now? And you may or may not get a clear answer. But that's what I had suggested to you on the car drive up today, is just you got to pick up the phone.
Well, originally I called her and I said that, and she said yes. Make the offer good until 8 p.m. I think that we could get this done today. And I was like, okay, great. And then I just got the phone call
now saying that they're getting another offer in, and they want to wait until the showings are done tomorrow to making a decision.
Yeah, well, that's the benefit of some of these hot houses on the Cape right now. That's the benefit to them. So what we did in the last offer that we wrote for her was that we went in and put a little rider in there, okay? That's an escalation rider. So it's tough because
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, it's tough because you're almost bidding against yourself. So I think what happens is we know at full price that's where we're at, right? So we're willing to do that. I think immediately if you and Serena can bang out, and this is again making somebody feel like they are not being taken advantage of, which is our own client. By the way, Laura works with me, if you didn't recognize what Laura that is. So this is one of my own deals that I'm giving Laura advice on as she escalates into somebody who does negotiation for us. So this is a really good moment for all of you to lean in on. So what I would say is that we need to go out there and put an escalation clause in there up and to a point where we are, happy. Go back and look at the one that I wrote. So in other words, we will add X to the highest offer that you get in writing up to Y, okay? And upon accepted offer, you will give us proof of the bona fide written offers that kicked in our accelerator clause. That just kind of keeps everybody.
Okay, Danny, I just want to stop right there because what we call that, and I have people on the phone, we don't do that. They're called sharp offers, and we had litigation against that about 5 years ago. Okay. So they're not acceptable in California.
Okay, good.
That's
good.
my
All right, so let's hold on. Let's leave it at that. That's California.
Okay,
that's not Massachusetts. You. Okay, so thanks for the caveat, Californians and everybody else. Check your law. We don't have that problem here. So what I would say is, Laura, there's an escalation up above that. And the reason I'm saying to show us the offers after is because they were rejected and not accepted. And we need to keep people honest, right? So that's what I would tell you.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll have to look at that wording.
But it's already written out, so you can just copy the offer. But what I would say is that you want to make sure you maintain that relationship with the agent. Say, look, and did we make an offer yet at all?
She's going to get it within the next 30 minutes. I'm just waiting for the husband to sign.
I would speed it in to try to, say some, keep some good faith. Say, look, we were there first. We're coming in writing first. We'd appreciate if, we just got a little consideration for being there. And we really want to hear what's most important to the seller beyond just the price. Right?
Okay. All right. I will go ask for that now.
Yeah. So there you go. That's what I would do. Just what's most important, because it could be timing, could be money down. There could be a lot of things there, right?
Danny, there's something else that I might add in to the escalation clause, which has helped me in the past in situations like this, is have the sellers write a note just about themselves and how they love the house and they love, the colors they picked, and try and make it as personal as possible.
Yep, agreed.
So that it makes it more than an offer.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. I've done that before, and it's a great idea.
Yep, agreed. Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
One thing, Laura, that I might, and obviously it's Danny's deal, but one thing that we do that's been pretty successful because we have such a tough market up here, it was like 5, 10 offers on everything, is if you've done your comps and you're very, very, very confident that it's going to come in at appraised value, making the earnest money released immediately to the seller, non-refundable back to the buyer, has really helped us. That, of course, and just obviously, I'm sure you've already done this, tightened up every contingency you can in terms of as few days as possible, but releasing the earnest money irrevocably has really helped us a lot.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we've done down here in Colorado, too, is, like, I just had buyers in the same situation, and rather than putting down, a few thousand earnest money, I think we put down like 11.5. And we said pretty much, hey, if we don't perform, you can not only keep our earnest money, but sue us. So.
Okay, that's good.
Let's summarize all of those great comments. They're all great ideas. And again, I like Gail's commentary. Let's just make sure that everything is legal under MLS rules, regulations, and state law. So always best practices if you're going to do something that you hear to go out and double check with your MLS if there's been any situation like that. And Gail, I'd like you to dig in a little bit deeper when you get a shot to see exactly what that case law was, what actually happened. Sometimes we generalize, but it would be interesting to see what kind of illegal accelerator clause there was or anything like that, because it's, yeah, I'd have to have the detail on that, because as market makers, that would be interesting. I'd love an edification on that, Gail. You still with me?
Well, Danny, because we've always been in a very competitive market, supply and demand.
Yeah.
We're Silicon Valley, happen to be the 5th largest economy in the world.
Yep.
So we've learned a long time ago, we called them sharp offers.
Yep.
And what happened was people would say, okay, I'll do $10,000 over the asking. And they went to court. They found that that was illegal, because when you put in multiple offers, then the person that should get the highest offer is the person that gave the highest offer, or whatever the seller decides.
Sure.
Let him come back and counter. So we do have, so in California, we're probably way ahead of you guys in terms of contracts and deposits and all of that. We do have that in our contract in terms of the deposit, that if they don't perform, that happens as well. So our contract is like about 12 pages long.
Yeah, right.
So,
well, you are
so
right. You are right from a consumer.
We have been through probably what you guys are going to go through.
Yeah.
We've already been there, and I love the part about putting in offers. It's always the same way. You just let the seller know, or the listing agent know, make a great letter with a picture, and then the the selling agent writes a great letter about the client, package that so that all disclosures are signed. So when you package it and you're talking to the listing agent, let them know. They become your new best friend.
Yeah.
Let them know that you have client control, what's going on. I'm sure everybody does that, but we do it automatically because we have so much competition.
Right.
So,
good point. I love it. Just to give everybody context, Gail is in Palo Alto, Atherton, one of the most competitive real estate markets in the world. And California has a history, she's right, of being ahead of a lot of other states when it comes to consumer protection. I can remember when buyer agency first came out, California led the way in its forms and regulations regarding that. So I would completely agree with this. I was just really curious. You learn something every day. I'd be really curious. We'll download you and I later about that, where there's any link to that case law. I'd like to edify myself a little bit because I teach an enormous volume of Californian, so that would be interesting. But I think the letter, Kate, your suggestion is 1,000% the best idea. It's ironic, I'm seeing it used more and more. I actually got for the first time a formal counter in writing the other day, and we've been going back and forth via email during this negotiation with some very cordial emails for me and the agent, being very cordial. And I think that's where I was going with you, Tanyel. I think tonality really matters a lot with people. I think we're all exasperated. I think one of the reasons why we're all hiding behind our phones and text and we don't want to talk to anybody, we're feeling exasperated. We're feeling beaten up. We're feeling taken advantage of globally because the internet age, digital age has sped everything up. I think going old school, and really being respectful at a real deep level, the golden rule, right? Practicing the golden rule, but putting it actually in writing and actually saying these things to the other agent and treating the other agent with respect. That goes a long way because, Gail's also right that she referenced something about having control over the client relationship. Like, these people are not new to us. We've been working with them a long time. We've already verified funds. We already know they're good to go, right? They're not looking to do an inspection for anything other than informational purposes. Those are all things that really matter because the other agent, me, you, all, we don't want to have to sell this house multiple times. And that's happened to me twice in the last couple of months where
and I you know what, Danny?
Yeah, go ahead.
Danny,
yeah, go.
Most people that are highly successful, that have a lot of money, are very nice. And when we all get to that point where, oh yeah, the pictures weren't right, you've got to calm yourself down. You've got to stop yourself from thinking those kind of thoughts and start thinking how you can help your client. Because that's just insecurity like you were talking
That's
about.
right.
But if you're going to become highly successful, you've got to talk the talk and walk the walk.
Yeah.
And that means calm yourself down. What's the best thing for everybody concerned? And not to be afraid, because that's what I hear.
That's right. Yeah.
And, you know, we can use a lot of other terms. But the higher up I go with, you know, like I have a new $7 million listing I'm going to work with, the more professional they are, the more they're not that emotionally involved, and the nicer they are to you. And that's the kind of clientele we want to attract all the time.
Well, for sure.
But we have to be that to attract that.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I think that's exactly right. No, I think it's exactly right. In fact, Kate, your father brought that up on our sales training call yesterday for Griffin Realty Group, right? I mean, that was precisely what he was saying, asking me. You know, what do you find at different price ranges? And here's what I would say. Let's forget price for a second. The best thing to do is to be a highly emotional, intelligent person, which takes constant practice, like going to the gym and exercise and leaning in on, well, what does that mean? What will help me do that? I'll say this over and over. What will really help you do it is an adherence to a professional plan and a professional approach that you can repeat every time, right? And not take each time for granted. If you're going to get your clients to write a letter as part of this and they fall in love with that, why wouldn't you do it even when the market's slow? Because maybe we're trying to get somebody to negotiate more and that just makes them feel like they're not getting taken advantage of. And we have a client right now, it's extremely important to him who the family is. And they wrote a letter. Unfortunately, the deal didn't come together over money in the end, but it was very, very important to him. And so I think all this matters. All right, good. Let me ask for another scenario. Somebody want to give me a question or a scenario about something else that we can talk about here? I got another good solid 15 minutes. One of my mastermind members or one of their team members, what's the biggest challenge you have from a sales training point? Let's do an open Q&A. I love it. A bunch of mastermind members afraid of their own shadow. Come on. Go ahead, Tanyel. Take it over. Tanyel, you going to ask me something? Somebody, can you guys hear me? Check, check. Everybody just got scared.
I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to think your way into one. If it's not right there, you don't have to force it. I mean, I can run with another scenario. Come on, GVD, Voltaire, Kate, Heather.
I have one.
All right, hang on, Patrick. I'll come to you.
Yep.
Leslie. Go ahead, Leslie. You're up.
Okay, so I had an open house last weekend at my listing in Birmingham, and a couple came in, well, a guy and then brought his girlfriend later, and they said, so I asked them to sign, they didn't want to make an offer on that house, but they said, asked me if I would show them a couple of other houses. Mm-hmm. So before we did that, I said absolutely. So we met at one more house because they have a time crunch, and I asked them to sign an exclusive buyer agreement, and they said, you know, we don't want to do that because we did that before and it didn't work out for us.
Okay.
So I talked to Paul. I'm not throwing you under the bus, I swear to God, Paul.
Okay.
So Paul suggested if I do write an offer to just have that buyer agreement right there, and say, you know, if I'm going to work for you, and I've worked for them, I've answered their texts at 10 o'clock at night, I've done everything. So any ideas?
Well, why are we so hyper-focused on a buyer agency agreement other than the mandatory agency disclosure form for the state of Michigan?
I don't know. I just thought that would be good.
Why?
So that they, you know, don't end up me putting a bunch of time and energy into it, and then them going and, I don't know, having something else happen where they put an offer in with another agent.
Okay, so Gail's already nailed this one. That's a complete fear-based paradigm that has you focused on your needs, which I'm focused on. I am focused on Leslie Collins's needs here because I'm your guide. So don't get me wrong where I'm about to come from. I'm all about your needs.
Okay.
But you need to be all about their needs. And that is a completely selfish indulgence that we all fall prey to. Right? I get it because it's a fear-based paradigm. I think a lot of the buyer agency stuff came out of that. Is that, it's a weird business because historically everybody worked for the seller in this concept of sub-agency. Agent goes out and lists it, you bring them a buyer, you're working as a sub-agent, for that agent. It was bizarre. I mean, so the consumer woke up and said, well, wait a minute, I, the buyer, am getting no representation. So in all states, we have the agency disclosure that just clearly defines whose rights are being represented. But the step further that, and again, I'm going to be cautious based on, Gail's correct statement about let's be careful what we say about state to state. In Massachusetts, signing a buyer agency agreement is not a requirement. It's not a requirement to get paid via MLS. So it's something that exists. There's a Massachusetts form that you could copy and use. You could go to your attorney and get your own, and you could make that part of your business model. But if it's not part of your business model and you're trying to slap it and inject it in the middle of this process, prospects pursued run away. The minute you start to try to control them, you stopped earning it and they feel trapped. And she's already clearly articulated that to you. So I don't know why we're coming up with techniques at all to say when you sit down to write the offer, then hit them with it. Why? Why at that point, if you got that far to write an offer and you're doing a good job and they know you're doing a good job, why would they want to start all over again? Right? So I've always been contented to walk without that safety ladder. Don't get me wrong. There was a time where as part of my business model, there was a big trend towards getting people to come in, sit down, and sign a buyer agency agreement. Then there was a big trend to add an upfront fee. But a lot of that teaching and training was coming from a position of selfishness for us, the agent. And what was atrophying was what benefit was we were really bringing to that buyer. Sure, we might have been rehearsing and spinning back at them some sort of a buyer presentation. But as I think back, was I really, really listening to them? Was I really interested in exactly what was bothering them and how I could solve it? Was I really teaching them a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 process that would empower them, that even if they decided I wasn't the right guy, at least I made the world of real estate purchases a little bit better because I added value? That's a whole different mindset. And the latter mindset, by empowering people, will eliminate or assuage the fear. You'll start to diminutize all that fear in your paradigm. But I'm telling you right now, people can smell that fear in us when we start to talk like that, and they will go away, and you will yet again have another piece of corroborating evidence why you'll be able to tell yourself you're not good at this, and you'd be completely wrong. It's just that the technique is not something you've made a clear decision on. And I'll go back and reiterate that one point. If you are going to hang on, Gail, hang on. If you are going to use Leslie, you and Paul, as a brokerage, as a team, if you are going to use buyer agency agreements as part of your process, then there needs to be a place that early in that process, they are introduced to your plan, 6-step buyer plan, and in order to begin, you'd like them to sign a buyer agency agreement. And if they hesitate, you can give them a cancellation guarantee that says, look, no problem. I'll let you cancel on anything that I've shown you. You would still be under an obligation, but then you could take off and take a look at others. Something like that is owning it as part of your business philosophy. But all of a sudden being out there and you getting frustrated that they haven't bought something yet is all about you. And now you get mad and frustrated, say, well, look, I'm not going to do this because, you could cheat on me. And so sign this. You're dead. That is not a business model. You're dead. That is a disaster is what it is waiting to happen. Gail, go ahead. Weigh in on that. You wanted to say something. Gail?
Oh, let me say one thing first.
Thank you.
Let me say one thing
Danny.
first.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is I didn't realize that they didn't do that process ahead of time. Remember when we did that, 7 years ago?
Right.
And everyone would sign it, practically. We offer what we were going to offer them. We did give them a cancellation if they wanted to cancel. That's if they balked at it. But most of the people would sign that. But in the middle of it all, I guess if you get into fear or you're concerned, I always ask them for their loyalty. You know, I'm doing a lot of hard work for you.
Yes.
I just want to make sure as we're going through this process that you're going to be loyal to me because I'm going to work hard and hustle for you.
Perfect.
I mean, that.
Perfect.
If they give you their word and they don't live up to it, well, that's another thing. But most people don't want to not say yes. If it's not true, they're going to say, yeah, of course. And just by pinning them down in that position where you're both at a win-win situation, it works really well.
No doubt. But let me take it.
And
go ahead, Leslie. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say I asked Paul his input the other day about it, and he said that I could, and I can offer if you're really unhappy, and I will, you can cancel the agreement. So I just wanted to say that was part of the discussion, but this is interesting.
Yeah,
what else?
Well, I want to take Gail's comment a little bit more global because I think it's a really critical point, and I want to use it to summarize a lot of what we do here. I think we're all sitting here worried about things not going our way, and so we're putting it all back inside of us instead of saying what's on our mind. Now, you can't say what's on your mind emotionally. That's where I started with Tanyel here. You just can't get all emotional and get on somebody and scare them away. And, well, you should do this. You have to calm that emotion down, but it's still okay to say what's on your mind. Say, geez, we've seen a couple of properties here, and we seem to be making progress. And typically, I ask people to sign a buyer agency agreement, but I don't want to go there with you. I just want to say, look, while I'm putting in all this time and effort, I just want to ask you for your loyalty. Would that be okay? I mean, of course, if I do something egregiously wrong and I'm not the right person for you, I understand that you'd want to let me go and go with somebody else. But I just want to ask, would it be okay to get some loyalty? That is just so easy to say what's on your mind, as long as you say it with a little bit of love and caring that you really genuinely mean. And I think that translates to what Laura's question was all about, what do we do here? Just say, to our clients, the best we can do is you're looking at good houses, they're competitive. Let's put in writing to these people why you really love this. You've been looking at a bunch of houses. This is definitely the right one. Here are the reasons. You love all this about it. You understand if, you don't win, you don't win, but you'd love the opportunity to try to buy the property. That's the best you can do. But you can't keep that all inside. You can't keep that a secret. Don't let somebody have to read your mind, because if they do and somebody else speaks up, you'll lose. If somebody else comes in right now and says, yeah, go ahead. Come on. Go ahead.
Can I read you what I said in response to him, and then you can critique it?
Yeah. You said in response, hold on, you said in response to what? I lost my context. In response to what?
Okay, so they texted me back later that evening after I had presented them with, the buyer, exclusive buyer agency or, agreement. And so then they texted me later that night and they said, we both, so anyway, this part is relevant. Also, we like you and would like to use you as an agent, but will not sign any form that commits us solely to one agent. We tried that before and it didn't work.
Okay.
I hope you will still want to work with us. Thank you. And my response was, thank you so much for getting back to me, Casey. I do want to work with you. Absolutely. I am very motivated to find you guys a great home that will make you and your whole family happy. As a single mom, this is making me upset.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Okay. All right. Well, look, let's just, you don't need to get that emotional about it, because you just let it go. You're trying to fit this all into like some sort of a weird mold. Stop doing this. Like, it's so much pressure. Like, stop doing all this stuff and just be human. You know what I would have said? Awesome. No problem. Can't wait to find you the right house. End of story. That's it. End of story. You're trying to get too technique-y and all this kind of weird stuff, and it's making for a weird situation that over the last couple of weeks, it's got you all worked up into a froth. It's just not worth it. I'm going to set you free. Stop trying to find the technique.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. Stop trying to find the technique. Oh, let me finish. Stop trying to find the techniquey things that get you there. It's simple. No problem. I look forward to working with you. I appreciate the loyalty. End of story. We don't need to go further than that. We're making much ado about nothing, as Shakespeare said, right? It's just, we don't need to go there. It's just far, far too much. And it's putting agents under too much pressure. They're doing weird things. They're forgetting who they are. They're forgetting that they're great relationship, people like you are. Just do you. I'm telling you, it'll work. Just do you. It's working. Now work hard to try to find them the place and call it a day. Okay? So let's just leave it at that, because you got yourself too worked out and you get lost in the emotion of it. And just let it be. Just let it be. All right, everybody, listen, I have to call it a day. Good work there to everybody who participated. I appreciate you all. Go out and try this stuff. But, let's leave it on that with Leslie's last call. Be human. Like in default, be human and defer to your plan. You just say, no problem, I'll take care of you. Can I ask you for some loyalty? Wonderful. Let's go. All right? Good work, everybody. I'll talk to you on the other side. Have a fabulous weekend. I appreciate you all for being here. Take care.